I have been promising you every single Sunday that this last Sunday of the month, there would be a surprise for you. And so today I'm delivering on that surprise. Our theme for this whole month, as I said earlier, is On the Wings of Love. And we've taken LOVE and made a little acronym out of it. Today, we're talking about enlightened enthusiasm. And the surprise for you is that I'm not going to share the talk. Yay! But somebody amazing is. Somebody who lives enlightened enthusiasm. Someone who is a student of science of mind for over 20 years, who is a student of religion, and who loves blending the two, and world religions, and blending the two in a joyous, loving, often humorous way. Would you please welcome my beloved partner of the last 25 years, Reverend Lonnie Whittington.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I've had a lot of comments about my tie today, and people have said that it could do the speaking for me. So I'm gonna stand here for about 20 minutes. You could soak it all in, and then we could all go home. I do have to give you a little history about it because Reverend Michelle talked about Las Vegas. A childhood friend of mine who I've been in contact with for a long time, years ago went to Las Vegas on his way to Phoenix. He picked up this tie for me. He bought it for me, brought it to me, and presented it, and never thought that I would wear it, thinking that it was way too outlandish, but it's one of my favorite ties. A lot of people mistake it for a Jerry Garcia. Well, it is not a Jerry Garcia. It is a Rush Limbaugh tie. It's been exercised. Don't worry. It has been exercised, so don't worry about it. It's not. It's my favorite. It is my favorite tie, and I figured I'd exhibit my enthusiasm. I also suggested that we have Snoopy here. Now, Snoopy has been exhibiting his enthusiasm, his extreme enthusiasm, for as long, well, I went to college in the 60s. And in the 60s, in the mid-late 60s, Snoopy and the Peanuts gang were really very, very popular. So I remember this from that time, and over 45 years, it has really stood the test of time as being a beautiful exhibition of enthusiasm. So he and I are both gotten white. So today we're talking about enlightened enthusiasm, and Reverend Michelle did go through, well, living the light and laughter and omnipotence, omniscience and omnipresence, and vibrating with vision and vitality all throughout this month. Well, today is an enlightened enthusiasm. Love is a very high vibration, but joy is even a higher vibration. So enlightened enthusiasm allows us to embrace and express that joy. So today we're going to be expressing the keys, finding out the keys to expressing joy and enthusiasm in your life. And I'm going to bring up some of the gurus and masters and yogis. I'm going to just quote some yogis. And one of the first ones is a very powerful yogi, one that has been with me for a long time. And he says, love is the most important thing in the world, but baseball is pretty good too. That's Yogi Berra. So you know where we're going. You know we're going today with this. So Kenyatta already has gotten the room going. She did a fabulous job of getting enthusiasm going. So thank you, Kenyatta. I'm going to get it going on a little higher vibration. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide the room into half. And this half is going to yell enlightened, and this half is going to yell enthusiasm. Now, I know that people that are watching on video, we were going to have the northern hemisphere say enlightened, and we're going to have the southern hemisphere say enthusiasm. So we'll do it 3 times. Ready? Enlightened, enthusiasm, enlightened, enthusiasm, enlightened, enthusiasm. That blew my tie away. This is normally the time that Reverend Michelle would come up to the lectern and say, First service was a whole lot better than you guys. But simply because Kenyatta did such a great job, you did a perfect job. So thank you very much. So we know essentially what enthusiasm is. And last week, Reverend Michelle talked about Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, who in his 90s wrote, "I fairly sizzle with joy and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to the things that ought to be done by me." That is enthusiastic, and that is a wonderful feeling. He also wrote in The Revealing Word, which is a dictionary of metaphysical terms, he wrote this about enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is the ardent zeal or interest, a fervor, a divine inspiration or possession. It is a powerful expression of living interest. It is active and vital. Enthusiasm is another word for zeal, and zeal is a great stimulator of man. You cannot think of or repeat the word zeal without evoking a certain mental thrill that spurs you to action in some direction. So a certain mental thrill is a feeling. It is a really high vibrational feeling. And last week, Michelle also talked about Power versus Force, the book by David Hawking. And she said that love was a high vibrational concept, a high vibrational feeling. And even higher than that is joy. Well, there are two more that are even higher than love and joy. The next one up is peace. That's a higher vibration than joy. And the ultimate is enlightenment. That is the highest vibration. So we're going to be talking about enlightenment today. Remember your history lesson, and you're talking about the age of enlightenment. How many remember what the age of enlightenment is? You don't remember that? Oh, you do now? Okay, well, yeah, an hour ago, yeah, she had no idea what the age of enlightenment was, but... The age of enlightenment primarily happened in Western Europe during the 1650s through the late 1700s. And this was a period in which the analysis and reason and individuality was springing forth. So there was a lot of philosophy, there was a lot of science. Individuals such as Immanuel Kant and Descartes were influencing the population. And also Sir Newton, Isaac Newton, the guy who invented the fig. He was there too. He brought forth ideas of natural laws, and he did not discover gravity, but he was really the first one to really call into the fore the concept of gravity. And he also brought into quantifiable physics the idea that things at rest tend to stay at rest, or things in motion tend to stay in motion. So now you know what the Age of Enlightenment is all about. And it so happens that the end of the Age of Enlightenment caused into effect the French Revolution, as well as the American Revolution. So things were changing in philosophy, things were changing in the concept of where the monarchy stood in relation to individuals. And this helped spawn also new thought, because this was the opening of the transcendental concepts, where individuals are now starting to take responsibility and realize that they were important too. So I'm going to ask a question. What is Siddhartha Gautama? Does anybody know what Siddhartha Gautama is? The Buddha. Yes, it's not an eye infection, but it's the Buddha. The Buddha. Hey, enlightened enthusiasm. Enlighten up. No. Siddhartha Gautama was born in eastern India about little more than 2,500 years ago. And he was born into wealth. His father was a king, his mother was a queen. And when he was born, they brought wise people in, just like the birth of Christ. They brought wise men in to make an assessment. And they assessed to a person, they assessed that he was either going to be a great ruler of men as a king, or he was going to be a great spiritual guide. Well, this was good news and bad news to his father, because his father wanted him to follow in his footsteps. He wanted him to be a great ruler and rule even more. So he didn't want his son to be influenced by the outside world so that he would not be called to be part of spirituality. So he did everything that he could to make life within the palace as opulent, as beautiful, as pleasurable as possible. He brought in beautiful women to serenade him. He brought in the finest fruits and vegetables to feed him. And whenever he went outside of the grounds, the king made sure that everything was kept clean, and even dead flowers were picked before the prince could see them. So this was all very gratifying to the prince. Imagine growing up in something so opulent as that. At his 16th birthday, he was wed to a woman, which he grew to love. And so he was happily in bliss for several years inside of the palace. But something started to gnaw at him. He wasn't really all that comfortable anymore. So he really wanted to go outside, but his father forbade him to go. Well, one day when he was probably 20 or so, he was able to sneak outside with his charioteer. And there were tales of him going out 4 times, but I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. The three times that he went out, he encountered an old person, he encountered a sick person, and he encountered someone who had died. And this shook him up greatly because he had never seen anything like this before. And he inquired his charioteer, he says, "What's going on here? I've never seen anybody so old and infirm. What is this?" His charioteer says, "This is the wheel of life. We are all going to grow old. We are all going to grow sick. And one day we are all going to die." This was really powerful to Gautama, the Buddha, Siddhartha. This was really powerful because his wife had just given birth to a baby son. And he could not imagine his wife, his son, his father. His mother had passed, but he did not know it because he was raised by his aunt. So he did not know that his mother actually had died. This was very distressing because he didn't want them to grow old and die. It wasn't about himself, it was really about them. The final time that he had gone out, he had met a mendicant, an individual who had given up all of his worldly possessions. And all he had was the clothes on his back and a begging bowl. And this perplexed Gautama because he had not known anyone who had done that before. So he inquired, "Why are you out without the luxuries of life?" And the individual explained to him that he was looking for the truth in life. He was looking for what life really meant. This was powerful. This was powerful to Gautama because he really resonated with that whole concept. So he conspired to leave, and he didn't tell anybody. He held his baby son for the last time and went out into the world. He cut his hair, he gave up all of his clothes and he donned some rags and then started going around and trying to understand what misery was and why we had to suffer so much. So he encountered some wise men who had helped him along his way, and they brought him into the consciousness of total excess in deprivation, in depriving himself so much that they would flagellate themselves, that they would punish their bodies, that they would not eat, they would sleep out in the rain, in the cold, and they would waste away. And this was going on for several years. In fact, about 6 years, Gautama was trying to capture the idea of why and understand why we suffer by suffering. And it is reported that he subsisted on a grain of rice a day. And he became so weak and emaciated that his eyes were sunken into his skull. His ribs shone through his breast. and his spine was, as he, in his words, were like a string of beads. And he was so feeble because of this lack of nutrition that he went to the river one day to try and bathe, and he almost drowned, not being able to get out. He recognized that this was not the way to be, because if he died, he would not have experienced why we are suffering. He had no consciousness other than what he was already doing. He was already suffering quite a bit, even more. Well, at this point that a young woman came to him, a girl in fact, came to him with a bowl of milk and rice and offered it to him. She was thinking that he was a spirit in the forest because he was so emaciated, he was almost transparent. So she gave that to him, and he took it and started to feel a whole lot better. And he says, this is really not the way to live. This is not the way to enlightenment. This is really too extreme. But I know what I need to do now. The other guys who were with him, who were also emaciated and probably in their 20s, said, you sell out? This is disgusting. You look at that. You're being commercialized. You're hard to believe. You're going back to that. So they ran as fast as emaciated guys could go away from him. Well, he was experienced in meditation, and he knew that through meditation he would be able to come to a realization. Now, he understood that there was a presence of force within us that is like the devil. In typical Christian religions, you have a devil that's outside that is taunting you, that is making you eat that extra potato chip or eat that gallon of ice cream. Well, to bring you out of that consciousness. Well, this was called Amara. And Gautama realized that this was an internal concept, that this was his inner being that was taunting him. And the first thing that Mara talked about was attacking him with a legion of flaming arrows. And those flaming arrows came at Gautama, and Gautama just sat under the tree and allowed the arrows to turn to lotus petals. He did not fight against them. He did not duck. He did not try to escape. He just allowed, and they turned into lotus blossoms and fell harmlessly around him. The next temptation was Mara's daughters. 3 lovely, beautiful, sensual beings that were presented to him. And at the same time, he did not resist. He did not allow them into his consciousness. He simply was. He simply became. And they turned to dust. Well, the last tempt that Mara had for Gautama was saying that there is no one here to witness you turning into an enlightened being. Who is going to witness for you? Gautama recognized that years and years ago that he had gone out with his father to an exercise in the spring of planting and having a festival of planting the seeds. And as the ground was being furrowed, it was bringing up worms, it was bringing up insects, it was bringing up the eggs of those insects, and they were being attacked and eaten by bugs. At that time, at that moment, Gautama was so taken with the existence of life, and he was so conscious of being one with all of that, that he in this moment became enlightened. He became enlightened to the effect that he knew that he was all part of this great life, this great energy. He put his hand down on the earth and he said, the earth will be my witness that I am enlightened. And the earth shook and became enlightened. Gautama fled, or not Gautama fled, Mara fled and disappeared, never to be seen again. So the concept of enlightenment is full awakening. The ultimate goal is attained when all limitations have been removed from the mind and one's positive potential has been completely and perfectly realized. It is a state characterized by infinite compassion, wisdom, and skill. he had realized that he had attained that consciousness of enlightenment. And he wanted to teach everyone that he saw that compassion, that enlightenment. He wanted to take this to the world. So what he did was he started teaching. And he realized that there was a middle way between the excesses of life and the deprivations of life. And he called it the middle way. And he realized from this middle way that there were four great truths, the four noble truths. And he called the first one suffering. There is suffering in the world. Now, it is translated as being suffering, but I believe what he really meant was there is dissatisfaction. It is not necessary to really suffer in this world, but there is a lot of dissatisfaction that we can create within ourselves. And that satisfaction, that suffering, is really caused by desire. Now, if you eliminate desire, then the elimination of the equation also extends to Gautama, and he desired to be enlightened. So you can't really realize that there has to be an elimination totally of desire. You just have to be careful about what it is that you do desire. The third noble truth is that this suffering can be cured by letting go of craving. Letting go of craving, again, doesn't mean to completely let it go, but it means to be aware of what it is that you are craving and if it is good for you or not. And the fourth noble truth is that you can attain happiness by following the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is a way of being. And I'll tell you what that is right in a couple minutes. But the whole concept between what Gautama and the Buddha wanted to teach us, he didn't want to set down a set of rules. He didn't want to set down dogma. He wanted each individual to find out for themselves what would make them happy, what would make them enlightened. So the Eightfold Path is right understanding. It is right thought. It is right speech. It is right action. It is right livelihood. It is right effort. It is right mindfulness. And it is right concentration. And that means different things to each one of us. So we don't have to follow anybody else's plan, but we have to be aware of what that plan really means for us and how it brings us joy, how it brings us peace, and how we can be enlightened by that. So I've got 3 little things that you can do to help yourself become enlightened. Hooray. And if you spend $50, you'll get a set of knives along with those. No. The first thing is to meditate. Meditation for 15 minutes a day is powerful. This is an opportunity for you to center yourself. It's an opportunity for you to clear away anything that is outside of yourself that intrudes. And it allows you to get together with your inner being that is love, that is life, that is God itself. You are God in expression. And it is so easy for us to be distracted all the time. So if we take 15 minutes every day, it is scientifically proven to make a change in our lives. It makes a chemical change in our lives, and it makes our attitude completely different. So spend 15 minutes a day at least. The next is get happy. Sure, why not? The whole concept is that we hold within our consciousness 2 entirely separate ideas. Yes, but. Yes, but. If you can concentrate on one thing that makes you happy, all of the other things will simply melt away. If you can concentrate on this is a glorious day, and this is my opportunity to shine, and you concentrate on that, everything else will fit in alignment under that, and the universe will bring it to you. I guarantee that. You need to have a feeling of joy. And that's what Fillmore said by a certain mental thrill. Having that feeling of joy having that feeling of being a millionaire, having a feeling of having that perfect body, having a feeling of joy, excitement, enthusiasm throughout your day in the now will guarantee that that's what happens to you. Having that certain mental thrill or that feeling. So we must get used to being happy where we are. We must be at peace with where we are. So release your expectations. You must release your expectations and have a happy thought. What I'd like to do right now is bring up Sam Murphy. And Sam has a little testament of what happened to her this last week.
Thanks, Lonnie. There are a lot more of you in this service than there were in the last service. Yeah, there's a lot of energy up here. So basically, in December of this year, late December, I decided that I needed to make some changes in my life. And in January, I started, attending Creative Living Fellowship again. And I had a desire to become a member of this church. So I became a member of Creative Living Fellowship. I've been attending services every Sunday, avidly listening to Reverend Michelle, with her lessons and everything. And one of the lessons that she had shared on was, saying, thank you, God, no matter if it was good or bad. And I didn't say this in the first service, but it was really hard one day when a bumblebee landed on my water bottle. Thank you, God. And it's become a little sing-song in my head. I won't sing it, but it just goes, it ruminates. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. So, and in the meantime, I also decided to take the Jump Start class, which is amazing too. And so I am a recovering alcoholic, and I am living in a sober home for women. And I was experiencing some negativity there. So on the second Wednesday of Jumpstart, we got to make affirmations. And my affirmation was, I let God's power create a home filled with peace and serenity. Now, I didn't know how that was going to go, and I even talked about it in the class with the facilitator. So it could have been a change in my consciousness. It could have been somebody leaving. I just didn't know. And then I also didn't know. So that was on a Wednesday. Thursday, I called Lonnie because I was a little disturbed. And we arranged to meet on Friday. So he's my life coach, and we met in the meditation garden. And he listened while I talked. And then he did a prayer. And most of you probably know we have a little 5-step prayer here, which is very powerful. So when the prayer was over, I was feeling the power of God's presence, some exuberance and everything. And so that was Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday came, I'm feeling a little more discomfort. But I'm still saying, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. And then Sunday, I also had the thought, now, do I need to take action? Should I start looking for another place to live? What should I do? And then I remembered Reverend Michelle's story last week of, the seminar she wanted to go to and how a call came out of the blue. So I'm sort of waiting for a call out of the blue, but it wasn't happening. So basically, I really had to practice let go and let God and not having any expectations. Oh, and what I mentioned in the first service, basically, I read something on Facebook too yesterday. It says, when you tolerate negativity in your life, you will get more of it. So break the cycle before it breaks you. So, I was just waiting. Well, we got together on a Friday. Tuesday night, we happened to have a meeting at the house, and the manager announced that she was being transferred to a different location. Now, I'm feeling like Snoopy here, but other women were having, a different reaction maybe. And so I couldn't wait till the next day to call Lonnie and express joy. And I can't even describe that because I thought I was going to have a heart attack or something because the manifestation occurred. It became reality. And And basically what I want to say with that too is that I am a beginner in this. And this is, my first little exercise in it. So I can't wait now. My manifestation was demonstrated, and I can't wait now to start on my other manifestations. Yeah. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you, Sam. So you kind of let go of expectations, really didn't know how it was going to happen, but had that concept, had that joy in front of you. Well, one day Yogi Berra's wife, Carmen, was talking to Yogi and saying that, Yogi, you grew up in St. Louis, and you played for the Yankees in New York, and we lived in New Jersey, and they're getting along in years now, and if you should go before I do, where would you like to be buried? And Yogi said, surprise me. Wow, okay. He didn't really have any expectations on that. So he was also very positive, and he said, well, it was very positive too. He says, I'm not in a slump. I'm just not hitting. So he kind of turned that around too. Well, those are two ideas. One is to meditate. The other is to be positive, have a positive thought. And the third is to acknowledge that the universe is there for you. Now, I remember that being in the hospital with open heart surgery a couple of years ago. I was looking out the window, and I wanted to be outside more than anything. I had tubes coming out of my chest. I had tubes coming out of my arms. I had electrodes all over me. And more than anything, I wanted to be outside. And I knew that if I was outside, I would be in that energy, not in the hospital energy, but in the energy of the divine and energy of love. And since that time, since being released, and since after 2 years, I've always loved to be outside. But I stand outside and I say, the universe has my back. Now, last week, Michelle had some great words of wisdom, and Emma Curtis Hopkins had some very flowery and poetic words to say that she encouraged you to say. Now, the universe has my back is pretty solid. It's not flowery. It's not poetic, but I think it's very, very powerful. So I'd like to have you say it with me. The universe has my back. The universe has my back. The universe has my back. Realizing that with these 3 steps, you are on your way to enlightened enthusiasm. God is everywhere, available to you always, and it is done unto you as you believe. In fact, that is exactly what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, as you think, you become, which is kind of a lot like what we're saying in the Science of Mind textbook. In fact, that is all we are saying in the Science of Mind textbook and how to get there. So, thank you so very much. Love is coming from all around you. We are enwrapped in the wings of love. But the most important thing is for you to love yourself enough to do these 3 things, to be enlightened. Leave you with this one extra thought from Yogi Berra, as he says, I just want to thank you for this day being necessary. And so it is.